Thank you for listening to our podcast on YouTube. We are super excited about the content coming your way.
Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of it. Welcome to the Face Ministries Podcast. I'm Cathy Little.
And I'm Melinda Wilson, and we are talking all things inner healing, true connection with Jesus, and the full benefits package of the cross. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, we're really happy. I'll tell you, it has not been an easy road, has it?
No, it has not.
So, yeah, this is episode 1.
Episode 1.
Dang.
For history in the making.
Well, what's really funny is that there have been people who have told us that we should do a reality show, but this is as good as it gets right here. We're going to talk to each other on the podcast and see where it lands. But yeah, so why are we even doing this? I mean, this is really like a brand new venture for us. We run a nonprofit ministry called Face Ministries, and we're really passionate about people getting connected to Jesus and really walking in true freedom and wholeness. But why are we doing this, Melinda? Tell us why we're doing this.
Really good question that we ask ourselves several times throughout the day. But when we peel back all the opposition that's come against, or the stress factors, or technology issues, it is about contending. And we'll share a dream that I had a few months ago that has all to do with contending. But the story behind the podcast and everything that we're doing, we're also doing a film project about inner healing, is that Cathy was speaking at a women's retreat in Ohio last September, and then she graciously gave me a few minutes of that time, so we both got to share. And one thing that we're both passionate about is getting people's heart healed so that we can walk in the fullness of who God has created us to be. Because we know that when we're not walking in the fullness of who God created us to be, life is pretty hard. I mean, it's hard anyway, but life is not so fulfilling. And
the interesting part about that is that a lot of people don't realize that being in relationship with Jesus is not just about eternity in heaven and the sweet by and by. Right. It's about, hey, we're here to co-mission with Jesus, to carry the kingdom on earth, and that's our job. There's a here and now aspect, and if you go to Isaiah 63, there's a whole list of benefits there that the cross represents beyond forgiveness. And a lot of people don't realize that. And, I mean, I know that, but I came to know that later in my life.
Right.
But a lot of people don't realize that there is a lot more. So,
and I think that really came up and was, I think in what we shared at this retreat with about 100 and so ladies, they were hearing that there is so much more life. There's life to the full. There's abundant life and joy and freedom from hurts and wounds. And so we introduced inner healing to them in a pretty elementary way, but that's a good way to introduce it, that we can have healing for our heart, and sometimes there's unforgiveness or bitterness or resentment or past wounds that are blocking us from a deeper intimacy with the Lord. And so at the end of the weekend, our dear friend Sherry Pritchard said, who was directing the whole retreat, said, could you just share with our ladies a little bit about inner healing and how it operates? So we sat down with them for about 45 minutes on the Sunday afternoon and did a quick overview of several of the inner healing modalities. And at the end of that conversation, Sherry said to us, well, where's a centralized resource where we can find all about these inner healing modalities?
Well, now that's the $1 million question.
That is the question.
Because after she asked the question, we went searching for that. Because a lot of people that are in the inner healing realm know about specific tools, or they pursue training in a specific tool. But I think it's more rare to find that people explore a variety of tools. But you actually had the opportunity, when you were being mentored in inner healing prayer, to be exposed to a wide range of different tools. So maybe it'd be interesting for our listeners to hear a little bit about your background with the fact that there are a lot of different modalities. Because that's where your training comes from.
Right.
That's what your expertise is, and that's what you were sharing with the ladies was a little bit of this variety pack.
And I think that we'll go into more detail. That's another good podcast.
Right there. We'll do that. Yeah.
But yeah, I was very privileged to be a part of a healing rooms in Asheville, North Carolina, for a few years, where we were mentored and trained in pretty much all of the inner healing tools that were available at that point. And there are a lot. Inner healing has been around for about 40 plus years. Starting with John and Paula Sanford and Judith and Frances McNutt, and we'll go into those in more detail later, but I was very privileged to be a part of healing rooms that wanted to expose us to everything, Sozo and Heart Sync and trauma and the Emmanuel approach and heart restart and life model works and all of the brain science and as many inner healing modalities that our leaders knew about. That's Pat and Jim Banks, and we'll talk more about them later too, but they would expose us to every one of them and even have the leaders of those modalities come in, and then they said, okay, we're going to train it. We're going to go do it right now. There was no talk about it and then
may as well
sit in it
in
for a while. We dove in immediately,
yeah.
And they were both people that really pushed us to, all right, let's go for freedom,
yeah.
Right? People want to be set free. Those that know it.
Right.
And so it's, again, like you said, Cathy, that was such a good point of a lot of people don't even realize that they need it. But then we bump up against stuff and it's like, what the heck? Yeah, I'm a believer. I've loved Jesus for all this time. What is this?
Yeah.
And so...
Well, I think with the whole inner healing, because there are so many different tracks, and that's part of the vision for the podcast is to expose people to that, to the different tracks. But what you experienced in the healing rooms was a really big deal because there was unity and openness to learn from all the different tracks. And it wasn't just we're going to be a one-trick pony. We're only going to do XYZ model, when there are a lot of other tools and tools that work together from different modalities. So back to Sherry's retreat, we're kind of giving them a fire hose approach to all of these different modalities that you have had more training, obviously, than I have because you were in those healing rooms before we even connected. But together we've gone to trainings for 3 or 4 different modalities, even just in the past 5 years or so. But there isn't really a place to go to find out about all of those different modalities in one place.
And Sherry said to me specifically, I think you were there anyway, but she said, there's no resource. Well, you need to write a book. And I'm thinking,
because that's your favorite thing to do. I know.
Cathy is the writer. I am not the writer. I am much more of a verbal communicator or filmmaking, which is what we're also working on too. And I brought it before the Lord, and I immediately heard the word film. And, you know, in this day and age, everyone's so visual. Getting someone to sit down and read a book is challenging. And so if we could actually film the leaders or founders of these different inner healing modalities, and so that, and film testimonies of how has my life changed from experiencing Sozo? How has my life changed from experiencing Heart Sync or the trauma prayer or Emmanuel approach or all these different modalities? And so that's what we're working on, is a film, but then the podcast is also another way to, let's talk about what God said to you about the mandate.
The whole podcast thing is interesting because I have a couple of friends that I'm connected to in a worship conference arena that I'm part of. And so there was this podcast that came up for worship leaders called Worship Leader Probs, which I'll give a plug for that if anybody is a worship leader. These 2 guys are doing this podcast, and it's pretty awesome just for worship leaders, and some funny stuff, some educational stuff, encouragement stuff that they're doing. And I was listening to that, and I was really struck because there's 2 hosts, and they're talking back and forth. One of them is a worship guy, and one of them is a production guy. And so they would have some interaction together, and then they had interviews of different people in the worship community that they would put on the podcast. And it was like, okay, this is a great idea. Like, I like what they're doing. And honestly, I felt like I was getting to know these guys because I was listening to them. And it's a way to kind of keep that in there's an intimacy there because like you're listening to a podcast while you're driving to work or doing work around the house or whatever you're doing. It's like you get to know people. And so that's a really cool aspect of the podcast. But I was thinking, we're getting these interviews with these key leaders in these different inner healing prayer modalities. And it was funny because we had 3 really quick yeses, and we'll talk about those over future episodes. We had some really quick yeses. And we hit January 1st, and I felt like God just totally laid this mandate or commissioning or calling, whatever it was, just sat it on a silver platter in front of us, and he said, get the word out.
Yep.
Get the word out. Because I believe Jesus wants his bride healthy. He wants us to be healed. He wants us to be healthy. And we are getting access to some amazing interviews, some amazing testimonies and stories of inner healing and all these different modalities. And we're supposed to get the word out. And the podcast is a great way to do that. Like, we're able to get the word out. And we're going to get the word out as many ways as possible, using as much media as we can. Because, hey, with you in the film stuff and doing the podcast thing and then the YouTube channel, because the ultimate goal is actually a pretty big project. We go back to you on the scope of this project that we're doing.
Yeah, I don't think that I fully even realize how big it is. And when I start thinking about it, it's a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
But, overwhelming can be a good thing too. I think that sometimes we think, oh, I'm overwhelmed. But, if you're overwhelmed with God's goodness, that's a good thing. If we're overwhelmed with abundance of work, that's a good thing if you like your job. If we're overwhelmed with the sun and the beach and sand in Hawaii, that's a good thing. But so I'm just saying overwhelmed can be positive. So I'm trying to see overwhelmed in a positive light. So we have so much to do and we're overwhelmed, but it's favor.
Yeah.
We've had so much favor. And real quick, the first interview, actually Donna Da Silva, who co-founded Sozo with Teresa Liebscher, she was coming to our church here in California, and I literally just sent an email to her address, and 5 minutes later she agreed to sitting down and having an interview. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. And then I got an interview with Dr. Carl Lehman, the founder of the Emmanuel Approach, and that is a fantastic inner healing model that I can't wait to talk about.
Well, he changed his flight for you.
He
it
did.
wasn't just a yes.
Yes.
He changed his flight.
I was flying to D.C. to actually do a week-long training with him in the Emmanuel Approach, and we emailed back and forth. He was going to fly out earlier in the day, and he changed it to later in the day and just gave us an amazing time, about an hour and a half. Cool. So we'll be really excited to share some of that with you guys too. And then Heidi Baker was coming to our church, and although she's not inner healing per se, she is absolutely, if you know anything about her, if you don't, go look her up, Heidi Baker, Iris Global. She is about connecting people with Jesus.
Yeah, face to face.
Face to face. So when I shared with her who we are, our name, what we're doing, I got a resounding yes from her as well. So
yeah, I love the fact that she said yes to us, and loved it even more when I found out when her PA told us that she had said no to 3 other interviews, and one of them was going to show up on God TV.
Yeah, it was amazing.
And she said yes to us, and it was, and then she said yes to 30 minutes and gave us an hour and 15.
And I tried to
end it sooner.
This is your cutoff time. And she's like, oh, and she just kept going. And so I feel like I experienced some inner healing just talking with her, because
my goodness, such an honor to talk to her.
Exudes the love of Jesus. Yeah. And so, when you are with someone who is so full of the love of Jesus and they talk to you and make eye contact with you, it does something to your heart. You are experiencing Jesus through them. And I feel that that's what we're all called to do and be to others, that when they encounter us, whether in an inner healing appointment or not, to show them the love of Jesus by being that love, by loving people. And that's what Heidi does so well. And so I feel like it's very appropriate that we had an interview with her.
Yeah.
Because you get healing when you encounter the love of Jesus.
Yeah, so. Yeah. It was an amazing interview, and just the presence of the Lord in the room was just ridiculous.
It was wild.
Yeah, so we have these 3 interviews. We've already done them. Mm-hmm. And that's part of what we're going to be providing the listeners is like snips and clips mm-hmm. and topics from those interviews, right?
Yep.
So we're going to be doing that on the podcast. We're also going to be pushing the podcast to YouTube. So you can hear it on YouTube or subscribe on podcast. And we're also going to be releasing some of the video from that as well on the YouTube channel. And we're exploring some things right now, too, about ways that you can actually be part of what we're doing mm-hmm. through this platform called Patreon, like become a patron, and then be able to support each episode financially for extra content that mm-hmm. would be exclusive to patrons. What you guys don't know now is that we're actually filming this, and that's entertaining in and of itself, is to see us filming this,
looking like
filming
this.
The podcast.
Yeah.
Because it just adds a whole different layer of real to it, doesn't it? Because we're actually sitting in a bedroom in Melinda's parents' house because we just happen to be up here right now, and
it was the quietest.
It was the quietest room we could find because we tried doing this in the kitchen or in the dining room, and the refrigerator was running. It's like, come on. So anyway, we're going to get the word out one way or the other. And I hope
the camera really is rolling.
I know, we really do.
I forgot to even turn it around to see the.
Yeah, we don't know.
Hello.
But this is something that we are really feel called to do, to get the word out, mm-hmm. to do the podcast, do the videos, and actually that's going to be accessible. But it also would be awesome if people subscribed to our YouTube channel, Face Ministries. And actually, it'd really be awesome if we got people to subscribe and follow our Instagram account. That's Face to Face Min. Yep. 2 is spelled out, Face to Face Min. And that's our Instagram account. And that would be a great way for you to connect with us through direct message there, because there may be some questions that come up because of something that we're talking about in our interviews, or something that somebody says. Mm-hmm. Somebody might want some clarity to something, and that would be a great way to submit questions. Yep. Through the direct message. So you can DM us there at Face to Face Min for Ministries, obviously, and we'll be happy to take questions, because this is episode 1, so it's going to morph from here a little bit. There's going to be some things that we'll do along the way, but the next episode, I'm excited because one of the things that we as human beings really, we're created to know and be known and mm-hmm. be in community and have relationships. But yet there's something about society today that's so different from when I was a kid, that you don't just go to friend's house for Sunday dinner mm-hmm. all the time, or live in the same community with people that you know. I mean, we have friends all over the world.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to be connected. But there's something about sharing story. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to share our stories, because a lot of people don't know them. There are people that have been around us in day-to-day life with us that mm-hmm. we've never sat down and shared our story. So in our next episode, Melinda is going to share some of her testimony and just mm-hmm. be a way to introduce people to who you are, what makes you tick, why you're passionate about this. And then we'll do that for me as well. Yeah, that's kind of what's coming down the pike. And then we're going to start releasing content from these interviews. And that's I'm so excited about that.
Yeah, there's some really amazing revelation the speaker shared. And, it's one of those things when you hear a revelatory speaker who obviously is very anointed, has a revelation of the Holy Spirit, and says one sentence can change your life. One sentence plants a seed that then starts to take root and bear fruit from that one sentence, because it has been revelation for them and is planted deeply in them, and they're living it out, and now they're sharing it with others. And when you share out of a revelation, that then can become revelation to your listeners, for those who have ears to hear. And so we are praying and hoping that those listening will have ears to hear, not ears to hear us really at all, but to hear what the Lord is saying, what he wants to do in our hearts. And I say our hearts because, none of us have arrived. And that's something I just want to add kind of as a caveat, that even though we're doing this podcast, we're all works in progress. We're all works in process and progress. Yeah. And even though we may be further down the journey than others are way further ahead than us, and vice versa. I mean, we're all on different parts of the journey, but we're doing this together. Yeah. So we're really just sharing what we've learned. We know that there's other experts that know way more than we do, and God bless them. And that's what we're learning from them now. And so, but we are just doing what we've been mandated to do. But wow, I mean, God's still working in our hearts, and we're still being healed, because it's like layers of an onion. He keeps peeling them back. But it can be hard, but it also is very exciting. And so that's a whole other podcast there.
That's true. I mean, hey, the content is endless for this topic. I mean, we can keep this thing going for a long time. And our listeners, you guys can help us by liking and subscribing to the podcast.
Yes, please do.
Subscribe to the podcast. Give us a 5-star review if you think we're worth it. That'd be awesome. And share it, because I think what it is that we're talking about is so crucial, because Jesus wants his bride healthy, and he's really moving in the whole inner healing movement is growing and expanding, and there is an opportunity to deal with stuff in your life. Like, you can't push a button that's not there. And I was chuckling when you were just talking a minute ago about how don't think we've arrived, because man, we haven't.
Spend a little bit of a few days
with us.
Oh
my gosh.
Everyone knows that no one's perfect.
Yeah, so. No one is perfect. And just the minute you think you're in good shape, there's this whole dynamic of, hey, another layer of the onion. Hey, I want to do a deeper healing in this arena. Hey,
Jesus, have mercy.
Because honestly, there has been a lot of contending and some button pushing just even to get the podcast out. But we just needed to take the step and just do it, because we need to get the word out. Yeah. And we're going to get the word out. And that's what we're doing. We're going to get it out as much as we can. There is freedom and healing and wholeness. And really all of the things that Isaiah 63 talks about are for us today, in the here and now, not in the sweet by and by somewhere down the road. So cool. So subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Instagram, be watching there for information on becoming a patron of the podcast. And it does take money to do this, and we'd be happy. We just would love to invite you to partner with us and be part of getting the word out. And you can go to facetofaceministries.org/give for that. And we're excited about the next episode coming up, because we're going to let everybody have an inside peek into who is Melinda, who is our co-host, Melinda.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, because she's got a story for you all. So,
thank you for joining us on our Face to Face Ministries podcast pilot episode. We're so glad that you've joined us. And we are excited for the journey ahead. And we are going to explore together what it means to really live freely and live in the freedom that Jesus paid for.
That's right.
So we will talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for listening. For more information about us and our vision, please go to facetofaceministries.org. That's faceministries.org.
Please like, share, subscribe, rate, review. Help us get the word out. There is so much more to come.